This is one of my favorite video games. The year is 2010. Modern Warfare 2 has exploded Call of Duty into the mainstream. It's now a blockbuster franchise. Infinity Ward has produced not one, but two genre-defining titles back-to-back. So that leaves Treyarch probably wondering, what the hell are we supposed to do to follow this up? Well, simple. Expand further on the multiplayer, expand even further on the new zombies mode they introduced, create a brand new campaign using things like motion capture, vigorously interviewing veterans from the Cold War and the Vietnam War to craft it, hire even more star power from Sam Worthington to the returning Gary Oldman to fucking Ice Cube, let November 9th of 2010 roll around, and what do you get?
The best fucking game in the series.
Of all the games in the series, this is definitely one of the ones I was most looking forward to, not just because, I was finally going to be able to stack this up against, World at War, Call of Duty 3, and just all the other Call of Duty games up to this point. I was just happy I got an excuse to just gush about Black Ops again. I still vividly remember being at my grandparents' house, like 11 or 12 years old, begging my parents for like the upteenth time to let me be allowed to play it on their PlayStation 3 before they finally went, alright. And the way my ass went straight for the TV would have been enough for the motherfucking Flash to tell me to slow down.
Destroy the child.
My eyes went straight to Black Ops. This is the one everyone had their minds on, and the one all my friends have been talking about. All I wanted to do at this point was keep playing, but my time was obviously limited. Every time I was over my grandparents, if I wasn't playing through Modern Warfare 2, I was going straight for Black Ops. And it wasn't really that long until I finally managed to snag a copy of the game for myself. For the Nintendo Wii. So unfortunately, I don't own this version of the game anymore, but considering this was the only console I had at that time, it more than did the job. And this time, not only was I binging through the single player, I was finally getting a taste of the multiplayer, which surprisingly translated incredibly well to the console. This version of the game all around is pretty impressive when it comes to the Wii specifically. I can't even imagine how much time I burnt playing zombies on this version, and the fact that it only had Kino der Toten was a testament to how obsessed I was with this game. A few months later, my brother and I finally got our hands on an Xbox 360 after Christmas, and of course, Black Ops was one of the first games we had our eyes on. Now we not only had the game on better hardware and access to all of the DLC now, but we were finally able to play it with our friends. Multiplayer and zombies was finally something we could do with friends. So I played, and I played, and I played, and I played. At least that's what I thought so until I saw my actual playtime in the game. What the fuck, there's no way I spent this little time on this game, what the shit? But I'm getting super ahead of myself. What I personally think of this game is probably kind of obvious, and is probably going to be obvious by the time you finish this video. But in keeping with me talking about all these games for this series, how does it hold up now? Is it worth playing nowadays? Especially after Modern Warfare 2 was a complete disaster online. Is this one worth going back to in any capacity? The campaign for Black Ops is a bit of a loose follow-up to World at War, taking place in the same continuity. The game starts you off as Alex Mason, a CIA operative who is strapped to a chair being interrogated by a mysterious figure. The interrogator is trying to figure out the meaning behind these numbers, which Mason apparently knows what they mean. This whole game's narrative is essentially framed from Mason's perspective as these men interrogate him to figure out these numbers, and take him back through how he got to this point. In April 1961, Mason works with fellow operatives Frank Woods and Joseph Bowman during Operation 40 to assassinate Fidel Castro during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Mason and Woods manage to kill him and just barely make their leave on a plane nearby, but Mason stays behind to ensure his allies can escape. He's then captured, and it is revealed that Mason actually killed a body double, and the real Castro sells him out to a Russian general named Nikita Dragovich. He's then imprisoned at Vorkuta, a Soviet gulag. While there, he becomes friends with Viktor Reznov, the very same one from World at War. With his help, along with other prisoners of the Gulag, Mason manages to escape, with Reznov seemingly sacrificing himself to let him get away. Upon returning to the United States, Mason is put under supervision of CIA handler Jason Hudson, and in a really cool sequence travels to the Pentagon with him and Senator McNamara, and meets President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy authorizes Mason to assassinate Dragovich, but not after he has some weird, visions. Well, that was kind of weird. Anyways, Mason and his team return to Russia to destroy a rocket in the Soviet space program handled by Nazi scientists, with the help of a Russian mole named Grigory Reaver, but he's captured by Dragovich's right-hand man, Lev Kravchenko. Mason's team rescues Weaver and manages to destroy the rocket, and in the process of escaping, seemingly manage to kill Dragovich in a car explosion. 5 years later, in 1968, Mason is sent to meet his team in Vietnam with Hudson, looking to recover a dossier from a Russian defector, who is revealed to be none other than Reznov, who survived the escape from Vorkuta. It's after this mission that we learn a handful of things on what exactly is going on with the Soviets, thanks to the interrogator explaining one of Hudson's missions in Kowloon at this time, and Mason recounting Reznov speaking about his past, and why both of them to this point are obsessed with finding and killing Dragovich and his men. Back in 1945, after World War II, Reznov and World at War protagonist Dmitry Petrenko worked on a covert operation with Dragovich and Kravchenko to extract a Nazi defector from a Nazi base named Friedrich Steiner. From there, they discover a ship containing a chemical known as Nova 6, which was being developed as a bioweapon to be used by the Nazis, but was lost at sea right before the war ended. Dragovich, thinking this can be of use to the Soviets and wanting to see the effects firsthand, betrays Reznov and his crew, and he watches hopelessly as Petrenko dies to the effects of the gas. It's only thanks to the British intervening that Reznov and his remaining men escape, who decide to blow up the ship to ensure that no one can use Nova 6. The Soviets then later manage to recreate Nova 6 thanks to the help of a British scientist named Daniel Clark, who Hudson and Weaver manage to successfully interrogate. Along with this info on Nova 6, Clark relays the information of a facility in the Yamantau Mountains to Hudson and Weaver, but conveniently gets headshotted before he can explain what the numbers mean. Skill issue, I guess. Weaver and Hudson get to the facility and destroy it, but not before their next lead comes from Steiner himself, who leads them to Rebirth Island to rescue him from Dragovich. Meanwhile, back in Mason's head, he recounts the events leading up to what happens at Rebirth Island. Mason works with his team and Reznov to recover Nova 6 from a Soviet plane, but are ambushed and it is revealed that Dragovich is still alive, as is Kravchenko. Upon capture, the team is forced to play Russian roulette and Bowman is executed. Woods and Mason manage to escape, get revenge on the Soviet who killed Bowman, and proceed to give the Vietnamese their own proper American welcome. They rescue some soldiers from Kravchenko's base, including Reznov, and in a final confrontation with Kravchenko, Woods manages to stab him, but Kravchenko pulls his grenade straps and both of them fly out of the room, apparently killing them both. After this, Mason and Reznov go off the grid and head to Rebirth Island to kill Steiner, with Reznov supposedly finally getting his revenge, but from Hudson and Weaver's point of view, it's Mason who kills him and calls himself Reznov. Now that Steiner is dead, Mason is the only one who knows the number sequence, which brings us back to the interrogation room, where, surprise surprise, Hudson and Weaver were the ones interrogating Mason. Mason manages to escape his restraints from Hudson, but starts to have some really trippy visions as he slowly recalls what has been going on, and with another decking from Hudson and a gun pointed to its head, things finally start to come together. The numbers are from a broadcast station being used by Dragovich, who has sleeper cells across America who are ready to unleash Nova 6 once the sequence is broadcast. Not only would this let the Soviets invade the United States, but the United States is preemptively preparing a nuclear strike in retaliation. Mason was, in fact, supposed to be one of these sleeper agents programmed by Dragovich and his men in Vorkuta. His original programming was to assassinate John F. Kennedy, which explains the weird visions he was having earlier, but during this process, Reznov took control and managed to rewire Mason's programming to instead kill Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner in an act of revenge for killing Petrenko. Reznov has been dead the entire time. Mason had been hallucinating him the entire game, as he actually died in the aftermath of the Vorkuta breakout. And let me tell you all that the way this blew my fucking 12-year-old mind when I first played this and realized Reznov was never there, and the game had been hinting at this whole time is a gaming moment I'll never forget. But I'll do the story gushing in a little bit. Mason finally manages to remember that the station is a Russian ship in Cuba called the Rusalka, with the US Navy working overtime to stop the broadcast. Mason and Hudson make their way to an underwater base to finish the job, and Mason finally confirms his kill on Dragovich, and they manage to escape. The game ends with historical footage being played of everything leading up to the moments right before the assassination of John F. Kennedy, before the footage rolls back to his arrival by plane, and who else other than Mason himself is seen in the crowd, bringing Black Ops to an end and leaving the audience wondering if Dragovich might have been onto something when he quipped that he, quote-unquote, tried to make Mason kill his own president. God, dude, this campaign is so fucking good. I mean, where do I even begin with it? Well, if I can immediately praise something here, it's that Black Ops really dials it back when it comes to the style. It's still there, but unlike Modern Warfare 2, which was the constant go, 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 Black Ops isn't afraid to slow things down, especially if it's in service to the overall narrative. This is, up to this point in the series, easily the best story we've gotten in a Call of Duty campaign. Call of Duty 4 is really the only other one that compares to this point, but unlike Call of Duty 4, Black Ops has a more clear-cut objective with its narrative, and that is, simply, to just tell a good narrative. Black Ops and its sequel for the longest time were the clear standouts in the series because for a while, they were the only ones that tackled this time period, and it's one that I'm glad they're returning to for the past couple of Black Ops games. Given the time period, Black Ops is in a very unique position to tell its story across fronts during a time when the globe was on edge after World War II, unsure of what was going to come next and if another big war was inevitable, and the game takes full advantage of that. You're not just going through the standard missions, you're going on missions that feel blacklisted. As in, you will never receive credit for what you're embarking on because even a hint of what you're doing to the public could spiral into something much worse, especially with Soviet Russia. You really get the feeling you're on operations that are off the books, from attempting an assassination on Castro to invading and destroying a Russian base in Yamantau. And what really sells these is how they build up to these missions as well. Before your assassination attempt on Castro, you're fleeing from a bar and making a drive-by getaway from local police. Before you blow up that Soviet base, you'd briefly take control of a Blackbird who is guiding the team through the frozen tundra, ensuring they don't get caught. Before blowing up the rocket and saving Weaver, your team briefly goes undercover with Soviet troops. Black Ops takes its time to build up to the cooler parts, and it makes the payoff for them that much more fulfilling. You really get the sense you're watching a political thriller at points, especially with that mission in the Pentagon and the mission where Mason slowly starts to remember everything that actually happened. It's video game storytelling at some of its best, not only because it's all in service to said story, but you're actually playing it. You're not playing as Alex Mason walking through the Pentagon, you are Alex Mason. And now that the protagonists in this game finally speak for the first time in gameplay, you get an even better understanding of what's going on with them. These are some of the best characters in the entire series, definitely in no small part thanks to the performances. Gary Oldman as Reznov of course stands out once again. Sam Worthington and Ed Harris do fantastic jobs as Mason and Hudson. Ice Cube is also pretty great as Bowman. James C. Burns as Frank Woods really steals the show. There's a lot of reasons Woods is a fan favorite in this series, and Burns really adds to a lot of those. He's got attitude, a mouth, he gets shit done, but he's definitely got a bit of a soft demeanor that he never tries to really show, like when he chooses to stay behind to defend Kason, or when their boat gunner dies during the trek in Laos. The twist at the end still always gets to me, and to this day it still feels like I'm picking up little details in the campaign that hint towards this. Some are more obvious, like I don't think there's any subtlety when Mason pictures himself pointing a pistol at JFK, but there's a lot of little moments, like when the numbers play every single time Reznov appears on the screen.
21, 10, 16, 23.
You'll notice afterwards that characters never actually interact with Reznov after Vorkuta.
Are these your men?
Woods, Bowman.
I am Reznov. Victor. What took you so long, Mason? That intel better be worth it.
There are some instances where Mason is very clearly muttering to himself in an almost crazed trance.
Shevchenko, he must die.
Okay, Mason. Scum.
God, the music here is so good too. One of my favorite soundtracks in the series. Call of Duty games really do not get enough credit in this regard. Sean Murray did an amazing job composing the game's score, which sets a fantastic tone for the game between its grander orchestral moments interlaced with these hard guitar riffs. It gives the impression you're playing something a little more subdued and serious, but it isn't afraid to be awesome either. The use of Vietnam-era songs is a little bit cliche, but besides that, this soundtrack goes hard. I think really the only real negative that I managed to pick up on while replaying the game is that it isn't exactly clear how Hudson got access to some of the information presented in the game. Like, yeah, it is established they always had eyes on Mason, especially after he returned from Vorkuta, but it's never really clear how exactly Hudson knows certain things. Like, how did he know Reznov sabotaged Mason's programming, let alone that he died in the Vorkuta breakouts? They couldn't have gotten that from Clark or Steiner, and they definitely didn't get it from Kravchenko. And on that note too, it's never exactly clear how Reznov really managed to break in and rewire Mason's programming. Did Dragovich and his men just leave Mason unattended while they were trying to program him to kill his own president? I'd like to think they would have been a little more careful about him with an astronomical task like that to reprogram his whole damn brain, but that's just me. Maybe Weaver is how Hudson knows some of this, and maybe I just missed some details here, but other than that, Black Ops' story holds up exceptionally well. This feels like the first time Call of Duty really took itself seriously when it came to story specifically. It's always been vaguely there in the past games, but if it wasn't in service to a bigger theme like World at War's brutality or Modern Warfare 2's spectacle, it didn't really have anything meaningful to say like Call of Duty 4, or it was just straight up bad like in Call of Duty 3. Here, the story came above all else. even above the gameplay to a certain degree. Now when it comes to this, Black Ops isn't breaking any new ground besides having missions specifically servicing the narrative. The rest of the levels are mostly what you would expect from a typical Call of Duty campaign, but there's two things that make them compelling and fun to play. One is that this is all to support a story that's actually great and makes you want to progress, in order to see what new locations and set pieces from the 60s it will take you to. The other is from the weapons themselves. What Black Ops admittedly lacks in level design, it makes up for with new ways to play around with guns. One mission, you're jumping from rooftop to rooftop in Kowloon, dual-wielding most weapons. The next, you're using a shotgun with Dragon's Breath rounds. There's a surprising amount of weapon variety in Black Ops' campaign. It's not a ton, like it isn't beating Halo anytime soon, but I appreciate the attempts to change gameplay up at least a little bit. There's also some pretty cool sequences with vehicles, like the boat section in Laos, or when Mason and Woods escape captivity with a hind. This is really as far as I can go because honestly, as far as the gameplay itself goes for the campaign, that's pretty much it. And in that sense, I guess if you're looking for more depth to your gameplay, well, there's already very few Call of Duty titles specifically that accomplish that, but regardless, if that's what you're looking for, you might not care too much for Black Ops. This game lives and dies by its story. Thankfully, it's a fantastic one and one of the best in the series, but most people are probably going to get their gameplay fix out of multiplayer or zombies here. Speaking of multiplayer, let's get into that, and right off the bat, you know what I was excited about? Look at this. Local matches have no progression, and what's this? Actual bots? God, you guys have no idea how much I've been missing this the past few games. With the state of most Call of Duty multiplayers nowadays, playing against bots is one of the only safe ways to play the multiplayer content of these games nowadays. Now, to Black Ops' credit, I did out of curiosity and caution play the actual multiplayer online on 360, and to my surprise, not only are people still playing it, but there doesn't really seem to be that many hacked or modded lobbies on this game. Now, take that claim with a grain of salt, I would still advise strong caution and sooner recommend getting the game on PC with a safe client mod like Plutonium, but I am happy to report that I didn't find many issues playing online on 360 in my time revisiting it. And besides, with bot gameplay and everything unlocked, it's so much easier to talk about the content here and review it, because I'm not prestiging in this game anytime soon. So generally speaking, Black Ops follows the same framework Modern Warfare 2 setup. Traditional create a class, pro perks are back, etc. But there's a few new customization options as well. Certain reticles on sights can be customized to have different kinds of sights or different color tints of sights. You can add face paint to different classes, and what I think is the first time in the series that you can customize operators. You can also add emblems and clan tags to your guns, and on that note, the emblem system has been reworked. Calling cards are largely the same, but for the first time, you can completely customize your own personal emblem using a wide variety of shapes, letters, numbers, and figures the game gives you. And you can get pretty creative with what you make too. I don't have that creativity anymore, and judging by my old emblem from when I was a kid, I didn't really have it back then either. So, I don't know, a simple smiley face will do. So, how do you get these? Simple. You buy them. But not like real money or buying or anything, but that sounded worse now that I actually say it out loud. Black Ops is kind of an odd game out because of how it handles progression this time. Now, some things you'll have to unlock through challenges such as the pro perks, but almost everything else. Weapons, attachments, the perks themselves, equipment, lethals and tacticals, kill streaks. These are all bought with this game's version of COD points. As you rank up, you'll earn these points to spend on different things across the multiplayer. Certain guns and whatnot will still unlock at certain levels, but once they're unlocked, they're only available to purchase. Points can also be earned by completing contracts where you spend some points to buy one, complete the challenge associated with it, and make a profit. There are also wager matches where you can buy into a handful of new party game modes to get more points if you make it in the top 3. Gambling, essentially, in Call of Duty. It's definitely an interesting and unique way to progress through the game, though I wonder what the real purpose was. Motherfucker, they were testing the waters this early. Now, this style of progression might be a turnoff for some people since it's so drastically different from the games before and after this one. Me? I actually like this, because it gives you a lot more freedom as far as what you actually want to get. If you want a specific attachment for a gun, you don't have to go through and unlock every one previously first through finishing challenges. You can just buy it when you're ready and ignore the others that might not benefit the gun. Some perks don't support your playstyle, then you can completely skip buying Last Stand in favor of Ninja. Camos for guns are also now purchasable, so if you really like a camo that's closer to the bottom of the list, you don't have to grind several other ones you'll never use. Progression in this game isn't entirely tied to levels or challenges, rather the game lets you decide and curate how your progression will look. It provides a level of freedom and agency the series hasn't really had up to this point yet, and one that Treyarch will obviously iterate on even further given their next game after this. and this is all supported by fantastic maps. There's a reason you always see the maps come back from this game and Treyarch games specifically. These are some of the best maps in the series, let alone one of the best launch selections of maps. You've got classics here like Jungle, Summit, Firing Range, WMD. Hell, even some of the less popular maps like Array, Crisis. And I don't think you can go through a single Black Ops video without mentioning Nuketown. It's easy to forget how good this map is considering how often Treyarch reuses it and brings it back for Black Ops games. But back in 2010, there was good reason to be hyped every time this map came up for voting. And on that subject, this is the first game to have proper map voting, and in my opinion, the best map voting system for the series. Your first map is a new one, the second option is the map you just played, and the third one is a random option. And I like this because it absolutely ensures variety. You'll never play the exact same map more than 3 times at most. And I think that's largely why this map selection is so great. There's not as much freedom with them as Modern Warfare 2 had, unless you're driving an RCXD, but there's a ton of variety in locales, layouts, and aesthetics in all the maps. There's also a certain degree of interactivity with them too, such as the rocket taking off on launch and being able to die from its blast, or radiation having these blast doors you can open and close. It's not a whole lot, but it does add some much needed depth to the selection of maps. Next, that brings me to kill streaks. Like the rest of the game, these really got dialed back from Modern Warfare 2, and while I don't think they're bad, they definitely have less punch overall than the last game. They can still be fun, like driving an RCXD never gets old, but there is a lack of interaction with a lot of these streaks. Unless you call in a chopper gunner or a gunship, most of the times, you're just calling in a streak and letting it do the work itself. Funny enough, most interaction you'll get from them is the care package, because sometimes it will give you a special weapon like a Grim Reaper rocket launcher you can't get anywhere else, or the Valkyrie rockets, which are also their own kill streak. And it sucks! This might be one of the worst streaks in the series. And I guess that can bring me to what I think might be the only real negative with this game's multiplayer. So I mentioned before that the campaign has a lot of variety when it comes to the weapons, but that doesn't really translate to the multiplayer. You can only get things like the Grim Reaper or a Death Machine minigun from care packages. Some guns, like the Dragon's Breath Spaz 12, are nowhere to be found in multiplayer. I think they may have been a bit too afraid of the game being totally unbalanced like Modern Warfare 2, and to Black Ops' credit, it's fairly balanced as long as someone isn't using a FAMAS. Seriously, this gun is on fucking steroids, it's so broken. But it does have me wondering why it didn't go the extra mile to include more of this. Make the Grim Reaper and Death Machine high-earning streaks so that there's more streaks that require interaction. Give us special attachments like the Dragon's Breath on shotguns. Hell, you get to use World War II guns in Reznov's levels like the MP40 and STG. Make those high-cost unlockable weapons, or maybe tie them to challenges. There's already a lot of fun stuff here, like an explosive crossbow or the ballistic knife that shoots blades out that can be retrieved. Go even further with it. Now, the last couple things I'll mention with this multiplayer. While my stance on the Prestige system hasn't changed since Call of Duty 4, I still don't like it and I still think it's an arbitrary waste of time. I will give the game this. It at least takes more steps towards making it worth prestiging. Outside of unlocking more custom classes, later prestiges let you customize your clan tag color, and arguably the one most worth it, a golden camo you can buy. This is the first time a game gets a completionist camo like this, and it's still one of the best looking in the series. Although I'll never see it beyond using it in local matches though, because I'm not hitting 14th prestige on this 14-year-old game. Second, this is the first game in the series to have a theater mode where you can watch replays of matches and make videos out of them. I never use this feature much personally, but I thought it would be important to mention since this is also a big part of why Call of Duty got bigger and bigger throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s. Since this made it so easy and simple for people to make videos, take screenshots, and overall foster an online community. The third thing I think is worth mentioning is that this multiplayer introduced party game modes like Gun Game, One in the Chamber, and Sticks and Stones. Gun Game in particular being my favorite. But unfortunately, given the game's low player count, it's really difficult to play these now, especially since you can't play them locally like other game modes. I mean, hey, at least Zombies is here to fulfill our party game needs, and what started off as a fun side mode has now turned into its own established co-op mode with even more depth than it had before. But before I get into that, there is something I do want to address as far as Zombies goes. I am well aware that Zombies has an entire story of its own that is told more in explicit details starting with this game. There's entire lore to it, characters and narratives that span across all of the maps. But you know what I personally think the best part of all of this is? You don't have to care. Now, I am in no way saying that the zombie story is bad, obviously, but it's not something that has ever really interested me that much. And because of that, I'm not really going to be talking about the story for the Zombies mode in these videos. Maybe sometime in the future I'll make a separate video talking about it in depth, no promises, but I never came to zombies for the story, and it's all supplemental to the game here. You don't have to follow it to enjoy this mode. You can be like me and be like, "Brain stupid, yeah, I'm killing zombies on the moon." The core fundamentals of zombies this time around largely expands on what Treyarch accomplished with Der Riese in the last game. Each map tasks you with surviving as long as possible, giving you access to weapons and perks you can buy with the points you earn in the game. When it comes to new stuff, it largely boils down to a few things. There's a lot of new perks here, such as Stamina, which increases your movement speed, Mule Kick, which lets you carry a third weapon, and PhD Flopper, which lets you explode when you dolphin dive. Dolphin diving is a new movement technique introduced across all of Black Ops, and doing it looks really cool in single and multiplayer, but it's never super practical. This perk makes it very practical in zombies specifically. Maps have a variety of Easter eggs that can be discovered in them, which range as simple as playing a music track or something that progresses the zombie story. This becomes a pretty integral part to zombies moving forward, but what I like about them here in this game is that for the most part, they're very simple. Outside of having access to all the Black Ops weapons, there are new wonder weapons as well. Guns like the ray gun return, and some of the new ones are great, like the thunder gun, which blasts everything away, and then there's ones like the VR-11, where all they do is just turn zombies into a secret agent. Points for effort, I suppose. Now, in the base game, we have technically three maps to play on. Kino der Toten is arguably the most iconic map in the series, and to this day is still one of my favorites. While 5 has a much goofier tone to it, but is a lot more difficult. There's also Dead Ops Arcade, which is basically a game within a game, putting you into a twin-stick arcade shooter against hordes of zombies. These are all great, and it gets even more fun when you consider the DLC. Black Ops is probably the first game to get significant post-launch content and support, with 4 map packs. This could be some nostalgia talking, but I do think this is some of the best post-launch content a Call of Duty game has gotten, and if you can snag it for a cheap price, I recommend getting it. Now, I definitely wouldn't spend a full $15 on each one, that's for sure, but since multiplayer maps you can actually play against bots, and you can play solo on the zombies maps, there's a little more incentive to actually get in here. Some multiplayer maps are a little bit of a mixed bag compared to the launch selection. Convoy I thought was a little bit boring to run through. Hotel and Zoo are really cool to look at, but they're way too big to play regular 6v6 on. But others are almost as good as the launch selection, like Kowloon or Stadium, and some have their own unique elements, like Berlin Wall having sections of the map that will gun you down. This, of course, included zombie maps, which proved so popular that the final DLC pack was just nothing but them. All the maps from World at War return, and they're even better here, thanks to the addition of Black Ops weapons on them, and the ability to buy Mule Kick on each one of them. Ascension is a neat map which has a great starting atmosphere, being in all black and white until you turn the power on. Moon is a really bizarre but fun idea for a map with its anti-gravity elements. The other two maps, Call of the Dead and Shangri-La, I'll kind of admit I've never really been that crazy about. This is mainly for one thing I realized I didn't really enjoy coming back to the zombies on this game. Roaming enemies. Oh man, okay. Zombies this time has a lot of new enemy types. For example, there are crawling Nova 6 zombies in Kino der Toten, and Hellhounds also make a return. There's the Cosmic Silverback in Dead Ops Arcade that's always funny to watch because hee funny monkey in a spacesuit. But Black Ops 1 gets a little too carried away with certain enemies that are either really inconvenient to deal with or straight up invulnerable. For 5, we have the Pentagon Thief that steals your weapon if you don't deal with him in a timely manner, which can be really problematic in a game mode with limited resources and a map with not a lot of rooms to maneuver. Unless you have an Olympia, in which case they'll be like, "Nah, bruh, get that shit out of here, bruh," and then give that shit back to you. Ascension has these space monkeys that will attack perk machines, and if they break it, you lose your perk and you have to rebuy it in order to actually use it again? The fuck? For Call of the Dead, we have George A. Romero. Literally! This map stands out since it has a star-studded cast that includes Danny Trejo, Michael Rooker, Robert Englund, and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and follows a zombie outbreak happening as Romero is filming a zombie movie. Fun idea on paper, but in execution it largely falls flat, because outside of the map itself not exactly being fun to traverse, Romero constantly patrols the map in different states to fight you, and he cannot be killed. Shangri-La has these napalm zombies that explode and damage you on top of blocking paths on a map that is also already pretty narrow. But then there's monkeys on this map too that steal any power-ups that drop. You can kill them before they fully take off, but that's also after they start shuffling said power-ups. Which, again, can be problematic when you need a max ammo, they steal it, and it gives you an unrelated power-up that doesn't help you and causes you to die. If that sounds specific, like it happened to me, that's because it did. Fuck these guys. Finally, on Moon, we have Gordon? What the fuck? I haven't seen you since the last time I played online 12 years ago. I almost forgot you. I don't think I even have a friend named Gordon. Put her there, old pal. Wait, hold on, what the fuck are you doing? Oh my god, Jesus fucking Christ, what the fuck? The astronaut zombie. He can be shot away at least, but god is it annoying when he actually pops up. It was at this point that I started to remember most of my fond memories of Black Ops 1 zombies came from the returning World at War maps, because besides the fact that there's more to do now with a bigger weapon selection, these maps don't have any bullshit like this, and neither does Kino. Zombies in this game is a ton of fun and an overall great improvement over World at War. The maps are mostly pretty good, if not great. A lot of the core fundamentals are vastly improved on, and I would generally say it's still one of the better zombie modes in the series. For a while, I even considered it my personal favorite in the series. Going back to it now though, I just wish the maps didn't have so many factors that serve to interrupt the fun. Surviving on this mode is already pretty difficult, like a lot more difficult than I remember it being, especially when you go down in 2 hits. I don't think these maps needed elements to make it also inconvenient to try and survive. Maybe if these were more round-based, like at least stuff like the Pentagon Thief is only confined to a single round, and I wouldn't mind them as much. But dealing with them on top of the hordes of zombies you're already fighting, it can get tedious. In the end, I'm not sure how much more I can say about this besides getting more personal about the game. Black Ops has meant so much to me over the years, not only from being a fantastic game, but from all the memories I hold playing it. I still vividly remember the adrenaline I felt from this being my first M-rated game I ever played, how enticed I was by the campaign, and how much zombies initially scared me as a kid. I have memories of playing with specific players on the Wii version all the time that I never spoke to or even communicated with, because there was no easy way to really do that on the Wii. But we played all the time together because what brought us together was how much we loved this game and loved playing it, either solo or with other people. The amount of time I spent playing against bots on my own or in private matches with my friends on 360 feels endless, even if in reality it probably wasn't a lot given my actual playtime on the game's core multiplayer. The times I spent with my friends on certain zombie maps holding out on high rounds in a last stand sort of fashion, the way my friends and I shouted at each other for getting revived because we had a pack-a-punch ray gun, that isn't just a meme, I promise you this actually did happen with people. Just in general, the countless hours I burned on zombies, even on maps I don't really care for, feels astronomical. And that's without doing all of the Easter eggs and following along the story. I can't imagine how much more involved things would have been if my friends and I actively searched for and did all of the Easter eggs on each map when I was younger. I still come back from time to time to revisit the campaign because I just love the story and narrative that much. And as I said before, even to this day, there's still little details here and there I discovered that I didn't pick up on before. That goes for multiplayer maps as well. I know on Radiation you can use this console to open up and close the blast doors, but what I didn't know is that on the opposite side of the map, there's a whole nother console that does this. I have absolutely no idea how I've been playing this game for well over a decade and somehow never even noticed that. I'm so stupid for never realizing you could do this the entire time, but Black Ops is just full of moments like that every time I play it. Even if it is thanks to my own stupidity of not knowing. I even own the Nintendo DS version of this game. I'm not going to talk about it too much because the DS games are their own separate thing that deserve their own video like several years down the line, but this was technically the first Call of Duty game I ever owned. I had watched family members play the older games before, but since they were never explicitly rated M, I got away with that, and since this was rated T on DS, I also got away with getting it on here. It is janky as hell. Being a first-person shooter on the Nintendo DS will do that, but I think it shows just how much I was into this game before I even played the real game itself. Can you guys tell I love this game? Because I fucking love this game so much. It's not just one of my favorite Call of Duty games, it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's a game I consider essential. And if you haven't played it yet, you somehow aren't part of the 20+ million people that bought this game when it came out, you owe it to yourself to play it. Even if you aren't that into Call of Duty, I still think you'll find something to like in the game's story, and that goes for campaign as well as maybe even zombies. Now, I definitely wouldn't buy it at full price. Wait for it to go on sale or buy it used for 360 or PS3. That goes double for the DLC of this game. With how little many people are playing it online right now, there's no reason to spend this much money on it. But for a budget price like $20, absolutely. I can admit that many of my feelings here can come down to nostalgia, especially seeing as how there's a few elements that I don't think age well, or that every Call of Duty player is necessarily going to like. The campaign can get a little stale if you don't care about the story, the zombies has elements that can make playing it inconvenient, and the multiplayer is drastically different in terms of progression. But I don't care. This game hits all the right notes with me personally, even despite some flaws it might objectively have. I was a little bit worried going into this game that I may have been looking back on this game with some rose-tinted glasses. And in some areas, I can admit that was the case. But in replaying a lot of what this game has to offer, I found that I was just as into it now as I was all those years ago. I stopped playing all the other games I'm currently playing because I was having so much fun coming back to this game again. What I expected would take a couple weeks to get footage for this game turned into a couple of days. I couldn't put it down again. Call of Duty Black Ops is a masterpiece, and it's one that Treyarch is very clearly proud of considering Black Ops is all they've done since this game. Now obviously that's been done to varying degrees of success, but it's clear that this game left a significant mark. Treyarch was not only now on an even playing field with Infinity Ward, but getting to a point where they would largely be considered the golden boys for the series. When you ask most people what their favorite Call of Duty game is or what their favorite Call of Duty developer is, there's a good chance it has to do with Treyarch. And that all started with this game. One absolutely fantastic gold standard of a first-person shooter. And I'll say it again, if you've never played it, you owe it to yourself to at least give it a shot. If you guys couldn't tell, I was excited making this video, like really, really excited. It's not often I really get to, gush about something I really, really love on this channel. I mean, I knew that Black Ops was going to fulfill that for me, and I'm very glad I was able to finally make this video for this channel. Okay, so let me summarize this. Let me give this, like, the Toulon, the TLDR of, like, why this game's awesome. Okay, so just picture, you're in the Pentagon in the 60s, and, you got JFK, you got McNamara, you got Richard Nixon, you got, what's the fucking dictator of Cuba's name again? Okay, but they're all in the Pentagon, and then zombies show up.
Oh my God! It appears the Pentagon has been breached.
Zombies.